Hello, my name is Ryan and I'm a junior level programmer working at a tech startup company. In this video, I will be sharing 5 lessons and tips that I learned or utilized in the month of July, both at my work and in my personal projects. Number 1 is using for else control flow statements in Python. This is something I accidentally stumbled upon during work where I was creating a function that involved multiple if statements and for loops. Many programmers are familiar with the concept of a for loop, which is a process where you iterate over a set of code to modify or perform a certain action on each iteration. In Python, you can use the for else loop that iterates through a list and runs a part of the code only if the iteration has been run successfully. Number 2 is using Python's list and dictionary comprehensions, which is something that I haven't learned recently, but rather have been utilizing more in my daily programming. If you need to use a for loop that doesn't involve complex and heavy code, you can use list and dictionary comprehensions to prettify and to increase your code's performance. Although the pseudocode is slightly different from a normal for loop, it is still very readable and easy to follow along once you memorize the core chunks of a list comprehension. Just a side note, I am aware that you can also use Lambda functions in Python, but I won't be discussing that in this video as I haven't learned much about using Lambda functions just yet. So moving on to number 3 is using custom exceptions for handling different errors in Python. I had a class function that was no longer usable because it utilized an old third-party package that was no longer being maintained. Because there are so many instances of my function being used throughout my code, instead of going to each and every one of them and deleting the instances, I modified the function itself to raise an exception called not supported exception to indicate that the function was no longer being used due to the drop of support by the third-party package. You can utilize custom exceptions in many creative ways, such as raising a role already filled error if a user tries to select a sniper role in a shooting game when the role is already filled by someone else. Number 4 is learning the difference between token authentication and access refresh tokens. I was creating a project to build an API using Django REST framework, and I came across token authentications but was confused between token authentication and access/refresh tokens because they both had the term tokens in them. At first, I thought they were two similar but different ways of authenticating the user to give them access to a website with specific permissions. However, upon reading more in depth, I learned that token authentication, or also known as ID token, is used to store and identify user information, whereas access and refresh tokens are used to authorize users to access protected server resources, such as allowing an API call. In my case, it was proper for me to implement an access and refresh token system where users can call an API endpoint using an access token to fetch data from the backend, and they can use refresh token to create a new access token once the old access token expires after a fixed period of time. The 5th and last point is accidentally committing code changes to your local master branch instead of committing to a new feature branch. I'll put some context into this one. When I'm working on a feature of a new project, I like to create a separate Git branch, also known as a feature branch, so that I can modify and test my code in an isolated environment so that it doesn't interfere with the code that's being used in a production environment and by other teammates. However, I'll occasionally forget to create a feature branch before working on my code changes and accidentally commit my changes to local machine's main branch. Because now my local main branch has mismatching versions with the remote main branch, there will be inconsistent version history and may cause confusion down the line. To properly fix this issue, I created a feature branch with the latest changes that I have in my local main branch, then reset my main branch by pulling the remote branch using git reset --hard space origin/master. So there you have it. I hope you enjoyed the 5 points that I covered in the video today. I wanted to share my programming experiences so that others can see what it's like to be in the shoes of a junior software developer, whether they are just starting out to code themselves or they have already been in the programming journey for quite some time and would just like to see what newer programmers are up to in their learnings. Let me know if you found this video useful, and I hope to see you again in the next video. Bye-bye.